What if your best friend was secretly filming you for years? It began with a flashlight under a blanket, 2 bowls of popcorn half-eaten on the floor, and whispers echoing in the stillness of a sleepover. I remember the way Mara's eyes sparkled when she said, "No one will ever know us like we know each other." At 12 years old, that felt like a vow. We had only been best friends for a year, but already it felt like lifetimes had been shared. Our secrets were sacred. Our inside jokes were a language of their own. And on that particular night, curled up in our matching pajamas, we made a promise to never, ever betray each other. The thing is, promises made under the softness of fairy lights and preteen dreams are rarely built for the weight of real life. Mara was always the documenter. She had a little camcorder before she had a smartphone, and she'd bring it everywhere. Birthday parties, school field trips, even random park outings. For the archives, she'd laugh. I never thought much of it. We'd film each other doing silly dances, fake interviews, dramatic readings of terrible poetry. Looking back now, I realize she never stopped recording. By the time we were in middle school, everyone knew we were a package deal. Teachers paired us by default. At lunch, we shared snacks without asking. When Mara got her first phone, I was her wallpaper. When I got mine, she was mine. It was simple, pure, a friendship untouched by jealousy or pretense. Or so I thought. That same summer after the sleepover, Mara suggested we make a private documentary of our friendship. She called it our Forever Files. It sounded sweet, even artistic. We would record little clips every week. Not for the internet, she promised, just for us. We'd talk about school drama, our dreams, the people we liked. Sometimes she'd ask questions I thought were a little intense, like, "What's your biggest fear about our friendship?" Or, "If I ever hurt you, would you forgive me?" I thought she was just deep. We were kids trying to sound grown. But her camera was always watching, even when I wasn't paying attention. The older we got, the more I noticed the camera wasn't just for our friendship anymore. She'd film people at school without asking, sometimes recording their arguments or personal moments. When I asked if that was okay, she'd shrug. "I never posted anywhere. It's just real life, right?" I started to feel uneasy. But by then, we were so entangled. I couldn't imagine a world without her. I figured every best friend had quirks, and this was just one of hers. In 9th grade, we had our first big fight. It was about nothing and everything. Jealousy over a new friend, a misunderstood text, stress from finals. We didn't speak for 2 days. It was the longest we'd gone in silence. And when we made up, she gave me a thumb drive labeled, "Ufogivs Felis." It had clips of us laughing, singing in the rain, hugging at our first school dance. I cried watching it. I thought, who else would love me like this? Who else would remember every detail of my life? The answer, it turns out, was thousands of strangers. But I didn't know that yet. That night, when I closed my laptop and texted her a simple heart emoji, I meant it. I forgave her. I let go of the tension and the questions. I leaned into the comfort of knowing that someone, somewhere, had been documenting my life because they cared that much. I didn't know I was being watched by more than just her. At the time, I believed Mara when she said the "forever files" were just for us. That belief would be the last piece of innocence I held on to before everything began to unravel. High school was where everything seemed to settle into place, or so it appeared from the outside. Mara and I remained an unshakable unit, the kind of best friends people envied and sometimes resented. In the yearbook, someone even wrote that we were, basically, married. We laughed about it, clutching our lockers, while Mara filmed us holding invisible bouquets, pretending to say our vows. I remember that day so clearly. How I twirled and she filmed, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the world was simple and whole. Our bond deepened with every shared late-night phone call, every joint study session, every whispered confession. We navigated awkward crushes and harsh teachers, made playlists for each other, and stayed up until 3 a.m. binge, watching movies no one else had ever heard of. We had a system. I brought the snacks, she brought the camera. At first, I didn't mind. I'd grown used to the lens. Sometimes I even posed for it, smiled directly into it like it was a silent friend. It made Mara happy. But as the years went on, I noticed how she never stopped recording. Even during our worst moments. There was one afternoon when I broke down crying after a brutal chemistry test. We were sitting behind the gym, hidden from everyone. I remember looking up through tears and seeing Mara gently tilt her phone, camera already open, toward me. I wiped my eyes and asked, "Are you filming me?" She hesitated, then said, "Only for us. I just want to remember how strong you are." I believed her. We had a falling out sophomore year, a real one this time. A rumor had spread that I'd cheated on a test. It wasn't true, but it spiraled quickly and the principal got involved. I was humiliated, and I was sure Mara would defend me. But she didn't. Not publicly, not even privately. She was quiet, withdrawn. When I asked why she wasn't standing up for me, she said, "I don't know what's true anymore." That hurt more than the accusation itself. A week later, I received an email from a fake address. It had a video link with no message. When I opened it, I saw myself, filmed without my knowledge, pacing in a classroom, muttering to myself during the test. It looked suspicious. The angle was low, likely under a desk. It made me look guilty, and it was time-stamped exactly 2 days before the incident. I knew that angle. I knew that filming style. It was Mara's. I never confronted her. I told myself it could have been anyone. But something shifted after that. She tried to make amends in her way. A personalized playlist titled Trust Again, a silent car ride to our favorite lake spot, even a handmade bracelet that said, Unbreakable, in beads. And for a while we fell back into rhythm. But it wasn't the same. I couldn't unsee that footage. Couldn't unfeel the way she looked at me during that week, like I was something fragile she didn't want to break or touch. Still, high school carried on. We went to dances together, even double-dated once. Mara filmed our corsage exchange under golden fairy lights. I watched her archive it meticulously on her hard drive. She had folders labeled by seasons, fall 2018, winter magic, or spring melt, and always one just for us MMs, and I assumed they were private. I never thought to look for them anywhere else. Until junior year, when I overheard 2 classmates talking in the library. Did you see the latest Glassfriend upload? One asked. It's weirdly specific, like almost too real. The name stuck with me, Glassfriend. I looked it up when I got home. The channel had less than 2,000 subscribers, a minimalist banner, no face reveals, just videos titled things like, The Girl Who Talks in Rain. She doesn't know she's being watched. This is what anxiety looks like. I click. And what I saw made my skin crawl. The editing was cinematic, the music subtle, but the footage was us, me, my laugh, my clothes, my dorm room, my breakdown by the gym. Each video was just vague enough not to name names, but intimate enough that anyone who knew us would know, and the narration, soft, poetic, careful, but not unfamiliar. It was Mara's voice. I closed the browser, sat in silence, listened to my own breathing. That night I lay awake wondering what parts of me the world had already seen, what moments were now public that I never meant to share. A week later, Mara and I sat under the bleachers, watching the clouds roll in. I didn't say anything about the channel. She didn't either. She asked if I still trusted her. I said yes. But in my chest, something cracked, and quietly, irreversibly, we began to drift. I couldn't stop thinking about that channel. Glassfriend. The name felt mocking now, like some twisted metaphor for our friendship. Beautiful and fragile, but see-through. Easily broken. The views on the videos weren't massive. A few hundred here, 1,000 there, nothing viral. But the comments were intimate. Viewers talked like they knew her, or me. She reminds me of my best friend. This narrator has such a kind eye. You can tell she cares. I hope the girl in this video is okay. I started to dig deeper. Every upload followed a rhythm, a season, a mood. The edits were getting more polished over time. Camera angles, music overlays, even scripted sounding voiceovers. It was clear someone had been planning this, evolving it, turning it into something. And it was becoming harder to pretend that this wasn't about me. There was one particular video titled, Unsaid Apologies, that haunted me for days. It opened with a close-up of a pair of hands, mine, fidgeting with a charm bracelet at lunch. Then, spliced between clips of me sketching in my notebook, Mara's voice said, Some people speak in words, others speak in silence, and some only speak when they know they won't be heard. It wasn't even what she said, it was the way she said it. Quiet, soft, regretful. Like she was confessing something, but only to strangers. I watched that video 6 times in a row, paused at every timestamp, checked the angles. I remembered every moment, where we were sitting, what I was drawing. I hadn't known she was filming. I couldn't take it anymore. One night I typed out a message to her, Mara, is this your channel? Please tell me the truth. I stared at it, fingers hovering over send, and then I didn't. Instead, I closed the chat, told myself I needed proof, so I ran a little experiment. The next day at school, I told Mara a lie, something small, something trackable. I told her I'd gotten into a summer art program in another state. I acted excited, giddy. I even printed out a fake brochure to make it real. Her reaction was perfect. She was thrilled, supportive, proud, and I waited. 4 days later, Glassfriend uploaded a video titled, She's Leaving and I'm Not Ready. It was all abstract visuals, train stations, half-packed suitcases, summer leaves. But the narration, sometimes people leave to grow. Sometimes they leave to run. And sometimes you just didn't know it was goodbye. That was the moment it became undeniable. I stared at the screen as a slow zoom closed in on a drawing I'd done, of a sunflower cracking open in the middle. It was hanging on my locker. No one else had seen it yet. No one but her. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger. Just cold. The betrayal wasn't in the videos. It wasn't even in the secrets shared. It was in the fact that I had never been given a choice. Mara knew everything about me, my moods, my fears, my voice, and now so did strangers. People who commented on my tears like they were plot points. People who watch my pain like it was content. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet, I wasn't ready. Instead, I began to watch her, really watch her. How often she checked her phone. The way her gaze drifted when we talked, like she was already framing the moment. The times she asked oddly specific questions, or when she nodded too slowly after I said something emotional like she was bookmarking it. And then, I found something else. One afternoon, I borrowed her laptop. She had stepped out during a group study session and I needed to check an email. The moment I opened the browser, her YouTube dashboard was already logged in. Glass friend, it was right there. No password, no denial. My heart thundered. I didn't click anything, just stared at the screen. The draft section had 3 videos scheduled. Titles like, One She Finally Knew, The Betrayal I Didn't Mean, and one ominously labeled simply, Final. I closed the tab before she returned, pretended nothing happened, laughed at her jokes, shared chips from her bag. But something in me had shifted completely. Mara wasn't just my best friend anymore. She was the narrator of a story I never agreed to tell, and I didn't know how to stop being her character. I started hearing my own voice in the dark, not in my head, in her videos. It was subtle at first, just snatches of phrases I didn't remember saying aloud. A laugh I recognized too well, a sigh captured through a barely cracked door. I'd play the videos back and freeze them, turning the volume up as high as it could go, listening for familiar echoes. It became an obsession. There was one video in particular that confirmed what I feared. It was called, Quiet Rooms Speak Loudest. The frame opened on my bedroom window, filmed from outside, curtains half drawn. My silhouette pacing across the room, holding a pillow to my chest. No face, but anyone who knew me would know. And then, near the halfway point, a voice murmured from behind the camera. She's rehearsing the fight in her head again. She always does this when she's afraid. I dropped my phone. The voice was hers. Not just similar, hers. I called her that night. She didn't answer. So I texted instead, Are you filming me, without telling me. No response. I waited until 2 a.m. Nothing. The next morning, she greeted me like normal. Same soft voice, same familiar smile, same hand tugging on my sleeve in the hallway. I looked at her and felt the surreal weight of reality folding inward. How long had this been happening? How much of my life did she archive? I decided to test her one more time. But this time, I would be the one documenting. I started recording our conversations, quietly, just on my voice memo app. At first it felt wrong, invasive, hypocritical, but I needed proof. Not just for others, but for myself. I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. Over the next week, I collected dozens of snippets. In each one, she sounded normal, supportive, even loving. But there were patterns, leading questions, prompted confessions, times when she'd nudge me into revisiting emotional moments. Tell me how that made you feel. What did you think when he said that? Say it again, the way you said it before. It was like she was shaping me into a script. Then came the day I decided to look deeper. Mara had a shared Google Drive folder for school projects. I accessed it using the old link she'd sent me a year before. To my surprise, it still worked. Inside was a buried subfolder titled MSN Raw. At first glance, it was full of unedited clips, thousands of them. Some were of school events, class presentations, field trips. But others were moments I couldn't remember being filmed. One video stood out, a close-up of my face asleep on her couch during a movie night. The camera zoomed in slowly, far too slowly. Her voice again, just a whisper behind the camera. Even when she's resting, she's thinking. I wish I could know what she dreams about. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The worst part wasn't that she'd filmed me. It was how much of me she seemed to believe belonged to her, like I was her project, her character, her muse. I didn't sleep that night. My mind replayed years of memories, now tinted in suspicion. That time I confessed my fear of abandonment. Recorded. The day I found out about my parents' divorce and cried into her lap. Recorded. That one night I told her I might be queer. That I wasn't sure, that I didn't want anyone to know yet. That was in there too. I watched that clip in horror, my voice shaking, Mara's hand gently brushing my hair as she whispered, Always. Except I wasn't. The next day, I asked her to meet me in the courtyard. She arrived early, smiling. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at her, tried to find traces of the person I used to trust. She tilted her head, concerned. You okay? She asked. I found your channel, I said. She blinked. Silence, then without flinching, she said, I thought you might. That was all. No denial, no panic, just resignation. I waited for an explanation, an apology, a reason, but none came. Instead, she looked away and said, I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how else to keep you. What does that even mean? I asked, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. Just reached into her bag, pulled out a tiny hard drive, and placed it in my hand. All the raw footage, she said. Every file, you can delete it. And then she walked away. I stood there for a long time, watching her silhouette disappear down the path. My best friend, my confidant, my narrator. For a moment, I wondered if she'd ever really been any of those things at all. I should have confronted her then, properly, fully. But I didn't. Instead, I chose to watch. For the next few days, I sifted through the hard drive. It felt like digging through my own diary, except every page was a recording made by someone else. The files were organized by emotion, joy, fear, vulnerability, anger, silence. Each folder contained dozens of clips, many labeled with my initials and a date. Some were short, a glance, a laugh, a tear. Others were minutes long. There were even ones I didn't remember ever living through, moments so mundane that I would have forgotten them completely if they hadn't been recorded. She had watched my life more carefully than I had lived it. I started feeling sick. Sometimes I laughed because the absurdity was so sharp it felt like fiction. Other times, I cried, not because of what she filmed, but because of how carefully she'd chosen what to keep. That's when the idea came. If Mara could turn our lives into stories, so could I. I decided to feed her a new one. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I approached her at our usual bench behind the art building. Her expression was unreadable, guarded but not hostile. "I have something to tell you," I said. She raised her eyebrows, waiting. "I got an email from a podcast producer," I lied. "They found my art page and liked the sketches. They want me to do a segment on creative anxiety." Her face lit up, but just for a second. "That's amazing," she said carefully. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm scared though. Might be too vulnerable." She tilted her head. "Will you talk about us?" I paused. "Maybe. Depends how honest I want to be." The next day, a new video appeared on Glassfriend. It was called "When the Artist Becomes the Subject." In it, someone who looked like me but never showed her face stood at a gallery wall, sketchbook in hand, trembling slightly. Mara's voice came in softly. "She doesn't know what her truth is yet, but she's brave enough to try." It was all a lie, my lie, and she'd believed it. That was when I knew. She wasn't just filming me, she was feeding on me. Every emotion I gave her became material, every moment of trust became content, every wound became her monologue. But now I had control. I could create a false narrative. I could lead her into fiction, and maybe I could see how far she was willing to go. So I escalated. I told her I'd reconnected with my estranged father, told her I was thinking of transferring schools, told her I'd fallen in love with someone who didn't love me back. None of it was real. I watched her nod, concerned, encouraging. And then I watched the videos appear, each more emotional than the last. "She's leaving again. He doesn't know she loves him. Forgiveness is a door without a handle." Each video mirrored my lies back to me like distorted reflections, but they were beautifully made. The world was falling in love with the character Mara thought I was. And I felt both powerful and sick. I wanted her to notice the trap, to confront me, to say something, but she didn't. Until the night she posted a video titled, "I Lied to Her First." The thumbnail was a blurred photo of our first sleepover. I clicked it, heart racing. Her voice was soft, nearly a whisper. There are things I recorded that I never shared, because they were mine. Because they reminded me of who we were before I ruined it. She was never a character, she was my friend. But I didn't know how to stop collecting her. She was art to me, and I forgot that art deserves consent too. I froze. She knew. The video ended with a line I hadn't expected. "If she's watching this, I'm sorry I didn't choose you over the story." No dramatic music. No montages, just black screen. I didn't know how to feel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to delete every file, burn the hard drive, scream at her until she admitted why she'd really done it. But instead I texted her, one word why. She didn't answer. I tried calling. No response. By morning her channel was gone. Not just the latest video, everything. Every upload, every playlist, every trace. Erased, and Mara, she stopped coming to school. No messages, no goodbye, just silence. I sat alone at the bench for a week, half hoping she'd show up, half hoping she wouldn't. Eventually I stopped waiting, because the truth was she'd already told her side of the story to thousands of people. And now I had to figure out how to tell mine. The days that followed felt hollow. At first people noticed her absence, but no one seemed to know why. A few teachers asked me if I'd heard from Mara. I always said no. Some classmates whispered about a family emergency, a sudden move, or a quiet mental health break. I didn't correct them. What could I say? That my best friend had turned my life into a digital diary for strangers? That she vanished after I found out? No one would have believed it. Or worse, maybe they would have understood, because that was the hardest part. I did understand, not justify, not excuse, but understand. Mara had always needed stories more than most people need air. I saw it even in childhood. How she turned every moment into memory, every feeling into footage. She wasn't just living life, she was framing it. Sometimes, I think, that's how she survived. By watching instead of feeling, recording instead of confronting, archiving instead of trusting. But none of that made it okay, especially when her silence left a wake of confusion and pain behind her. I kept waiting for her to return, to explain herself, to apologize again. this time in person, but weeks turned into months, and the bench behind the art building remained empty. The shared Google Drive disappeared. The hard drive she'd given me started to feel like a tombstone, a grave for a friendship that no longer existed. And still, I couldn't bring myself to delete the files. I told myself it was for closure, for evidence, for healing, but part of me deep down wanted to remember, even the worst parts, because for so long we had been my story too. In her absence, I tried to rebuild. I reconnected with people I'd neglected while orbiting Mara's world. Old friends, cousins, even a few classmates who'd once kept their distance. Slowly, awkwardly, I began forming new bonds, not as someone's shadow, not as someone's subject, but as myself. But the scars lingered. I flinched when people complimented me too directly. I hesitated before sharing anything personal. I second-guessed myself in every vulnerable moment, wondering if it was somehow being captured, if my feelings were being quietly harvested for someone else's narrative. And then came the moment I'd feared. Someone found an archived clip. It was during history class. A girl I barely knew leaned over and whispered, "Hey, were you in that Glassfriend video? The one with the cracked sunflower drawing?" I froze. "It's gone now," she said quickly. "But someone reposted it on TikTok. People were saying it was about grief. I didn't even realize it was you until I saw that drawing in your notebook." I didn't answer. I just nodded, heart pounding. Later that night, I scarred TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, and she was right. The internet never forgets. Though the original channel was gone, fragments had survived. Fans had saved their favorites. Clips had been reshared, discussed, dissected. Theories floated around who the narrator was, who the girl in the videos might be, what the story really meant. Some guessed the truth. Others romanticized it. I wasn't sure which was worse. What haunted me most were the comments. People writing things like, "This is real love even if it's broken," or, "I'd give anything for someone to see me the way she saw her." And then, darker ones, "She's lucky. At least someone cared enough to remember her." It made my stomach twist. Because being remembered isn't the same as being loved, being watched isn't the same as being known, and being curated is not the same as being cared for. Still, I couldn't stop myself from reading, searching, trying to find a pattern, a reason, a hidden message, something that would help me make peace with what she'd done. That's when I noticed the channel's email address buried in one of the older reposts. It was still active. I stared at it for hours, and then I wrote her a message. "Mara, if you're still out there, if you're reading this, I need to know why. Not the poetic version, not the narration, the real reason. Because I want to let go. But I can't unless I understand what we actually were to you, not to your viewers, to you." I hit send. Days passed. Then a week, no reply, until late one night my inbox pinged. Not a message, a file, no text, just a video titled, "Unlisted." I opened it with trembling hands. It was one long uncut take. Just Mara sitting on her bedroom floor, hair messier than I'd ever seen, wearing one of our old matching pajama shirts. No music, no edits, no filter. She looked tired, hollow. She stared at the camera for a full minute before speaking. "You weren't a story to me. You were the only real thing I had. I started filming because I didn't want to forget you. Then, I kept filming because I couldn't stop. Because somewhere along the way, it became easier to love you in footage than to be brave enough to love you in person. I know I ruined everything. I know I crossed lines I can't uncross. But please believe me when I say I was always watching because I was always afraid you'd leave. And now you have. And I deserve that." She didn't cry. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just stopped recording. The screen faded to black. The video stayed with me like a ghost. I didn't respond right away. I didn't even save it to my hard drive. I let it sit in my inbox, untouched, like a fragile piece of glass I couldn't decide whether to display or shatter. Watching it once had been enough. Maybe too much. Because in that unedited clip, in Mara's confession, I saw something I hadn't allowed myself to see before: the exhaustion in her eyes, the hollow cadence of her voice, the complete absence of performance. It was the first time she wasn't narrating. She was just there. But the damage had already been done. I found that out 2 days later, when someone tagged me in a comment on a viral video. It was titled, "She didn't know it was being filmed, until it was too late." Over 80,000 views. Reposted by an anonymous account. My stomach dropped. It was me, crying, in my bedroom, that moment from sophomore year after the chemistry test, the same footage I thought Mara had never shared. There it was, raw, exposed, repackaged with sad music and commentary overlays from strangers. The video was edited like an art film, lingering shots, melancholic piano, text that read she was breaking in silence. But someone saw her. The comments were flooded with speculation, sympathy, obsession. "Who is this girl? I want to hug her. This hits too hard. Is it real? She's the reason I started therapy." I didn't know whether to scream or run or vanish. Because the world hadn't just seen me. It had adopted me, turned my grief into their healing, used my breakdown as a mirror for their own. I reported the video, so did a few friends. It was taken down in a day. But by then, the copies had already spread. Reddit, Tumblr, aesthetic Instagram reels everywhere, my face, my fear, my story. And Mara hadn't done this, not directly. She deleted her channel, tried to give me back my privacy. But someone out there had saved it, repackaged it, shared it. And now it lived forever in corners of the internet I couldn't touch. I skipped school for a week. I couldn't face the glances, the whispering, the feeling that everyone had seen more of me than they should have. And then, the final betrayal. A video surfaced on a creator drama channel. It was titled, The Truth About Glassfriend. Hidden Files Leaked. I didn't want to watch it, but I had to. The narrator spoke over clips of Mara's deleted footage, claiming they'd been sent a cache of unlisted videos by an anonymous source. They blurred my face, changed my voice, but I knew every moment. My pain, my privacy. And near the end, they revealed something else a never-before-seen video Mara had never posted. It was a 10-minute feature. It opened with a title card. This wasn't for you. The first half showed Mara and me laughing years ago, old footage from the early days, our matching bracelets, the infamous bench, a montage of the quiet, real things. The second half, it was me, during our fake argument, the one I staged to test her. Her camera caught me smiling after she walked away, flipping her off playfully, mouthing, "Gotcha." Mara had known, even then, and yet she'd never used it, until now, or someone else had. The feature ended with her voice, soft, tired. Maybe the worst thing I did wasn't filming her. Maybe it was thinking she wouldn't catch on. Maybe it was knowing she deserved to write her own ending, and still not letting her. I sat in my room stunned. Mara had made a final video, and someone else had released it. I didn't know what to do with that. With the weight of it. With the layers of betrayal, hers, mine, the internet's. But I knew one thing, this story wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the world now, and all I could do was decide whether to fight that or write something new. Mara was gone. Not physically. I eventually found out from a former classmate that she'd transferred schools mid-semester, something about a mental health leave, and a move to live with an aunt across the state. But emotionally, socially, digitally she had vanished. Her accounts were scrubbed, her number disconnected. Her parents refused to talk when I tried reaching out. It was as if she had ghosted the entire world, and yet she lingered everywhere. Randomly, her handwriting would flash across the margin of an old notebook. A Polaroid from a class trip would fall out from between the pages of a textbook. I'd hear a song she once claimed summed us up while shopping for groceries, and suddenly I'd be right back in her car, late night driving, windows down, her laugh catching in the wind. Ghosts don't need permission to stay, they just do. For a while, I thought I might be going crazy. I kept replaying everything, the recordings, the videos, the lies, the almost apologies. I felt like I was constantly standing in a room she had just left, still warm with her presence but eerily quiet. No closure, no confrontation, just a dangling goodbye and the echo of 1,000 moments she'd captured without asking. And the worst part, no one else really understood. Friends tried, they said things like, "That's so messed up and you should sue her, and she must have been obsessed with you." But all of it missed the point. She wasn't obsessed with me, she was lost. And I was her anchor, until I wasn't. It's hard to explain to someone who's never been ghosted by a person who once knew your entire soul. Mara wasn't just my best friend, she was my witness, the one who remembered the version of me I never wrote down. And now she was gone. A month passed. Then too, the videos faded from public discourse. The reposts slowed. Eventually, something new went viral, someone else's pain packaged neatly for public consumption. The internet moved on. But I didn't. Then, in early spring, something strange happened. I received a letter. Not in a DM, a real, handwritten letter, no return address. Just my name on the front, in all caps. The handwriting was unmistakable. Inside was a single sentence. "I miss you more when I'm proud of you." No signature. I stared at that line for a long time. She had to have mailed it. No one else would write something like that. No one else would know how often I used to wonder whether she was proud of me. Or just proud of her footage of me. And now here she was again, leaving a trace, no explanation. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Even if I'd wanted to, there was nowhere to send anything. But I carried the letter with me for weeks. Tucked in the sleeve of my sketchbook, folded carefully between 2 blank pages, like a scar that hadn't quite finished healing. Then, more time passed. I started seeing a therapist. It was awkward at first, explaining the situation. My best friend filmed me for years without consent and turned my life into content. But eventually I stopped trying to sound normal and just told the truth. I talked. A lot. About the sleepovers, the secrets, the moments I thought were ours. About the betrayal. About the brief hunger I'd felt when lying to her. Like I was finally taking my life back. About the guilt that followed. About the line between love and documentation. And through all of it, my therapist kept asking the same thing. What would you say to her if she walked in right now? At first, I said nothing. Then I'd mutter things like, "Why?" or "How could you?" But eventually, I found a different answer. I'd tell her I still think of her every time I see a lens, because that was the truth. Even after everything, I missed her, or the version of her I thought I knew. And maybe, in some broken way, she missed me too. Because the letters didn't stop, every few weeks another would arrive. Always in the same envelope, always unsigned, never asking for forgiveness. Just fragments of thought. I hope you kept the bracelet. Do you still draw people when they don't know? The bench is still there, I checked. Each one a breadcrumb, each one reminding me that she was still watching, not through a screen anymore, but from memory, and strangely that hurt less. Because this time I had a choice, to read, or not, to forgive, or not, to let the story end, or not. I still hadn't decided, but at least now I was the one writing it. Time, I had learned, doesn't heal everything. It just changes how much it hurts. In the weeks following Mara's disappearance, I kept to myself. The few friends I had left respected the silence I wrapped around me like a cloak. I wasn't ready to let anyone in, not after the betrayal, not after the constant sense of exposure. Even being asked how I was doing felt invasive, like the question itself was another camera lens. The school counselor offered to connect me with someone, but I politely declined. Therapy was already happening, slowly, privately, and away from the building that had housed too many of my worst moments. There was a new anxiety that lived in me now. Small, sharp. It flared up whenever someone picked up their phone near me. I started changing where I sat in class, always choosing corners, backs of rooms, avoiding windows. I deleted all my social media except for a private art account with no photos of myself. I stopped speaking in public unless absolutely necessary. Mara had recorded me, yes. But I'd been the one who let her get that close in the first place. That truth was harder to accept. I began to journal again. Not digitally, by hand. There was something sacred in the scratch of pen on paper, something that couldn't be screenshotted or reposted. I wrote letters I never sent, mostly to her. Sometimes they were angry, sometimes they were nostalgic, but mostly they asked questions. When did you stop seeing me as a person and start seeing me as a project? Did you love me at all, or just the idea of me? What would you have done if I never found out? One day, I burned one of the letters. It wasn't symbolic, I was just tired of holding on to things. That became a kind of ritual. Raid, burn, let go. I got better, a little. I focused on school, started helping a younger student with their art portfolio, applied for an internship at a local gallery. I said yes to coffee with people I used to avoid. I didn't tell them the full story. I just said, we stopped being friends, and left it at that. The truth was too big for casual conversation, but I still thought about it every day. Then, sometime in early summer, a strange thing happened. I woke up one morning to an email from a company called Heartwire Digital. I didn't recognize the name. The subject line read, "Content claim request private footage usage." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a formal message informing me that several clips featuring my likeness had been flagged as belonging to a previous channel, Glass Framed, which had now been permanently deactivated. The email included a list of users who had re-uploaded or monetized content from the original videos. My name wasn't directly mentioned, but I was given an option. Do you wish to assert copyright over your own image and request takedowns of all known re-uploads? I stared at the screen, heart thudding. Yes, I clicked yes. It took a few days, but I started seeing results. Videos disappeared, accounts received copyright strikes, posts were quietly deleted or set to private. The internet couldn't forget, but it could be pushed to stop spreading. That gave me a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a say in my own story. The next week, I received a final letter. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first. It was sloppier, rushed, almost unfamiliar. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, torn at the edge. It read, "I'm not filming anymore. I don't even own a camera. I just wanted you to know that I did try to stop. I just never learned how to exist without a lens. You were the only thing I saw clearly, and that's what scared me most." It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. I didn't burn that one. I folded it gently, placed it inside the sketchbook that held the earlier notes, and closed the cover for good. That afternoon, I returned to the bench behind the art building. The one where we used to sit, the one where so many things began and ended. It was warm, quiet, empty. I sat down, breathed, and for the first time in over a year, I didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. At the sky, unframed, and let myself be unseen. It was almost exactly a year later when I saw her again. By then, the pieces of my life had been slowly rearranged into something resembling peace. The whispers about Glass Friend had faded into memory. The younger students at school didn't know my name. The final year was coming to a quiet, uneventful close, which, for the first time, I welcomed. I didn't want drama or poetry. I wanted something plain, honest, real. And so, on a rainy Saturday morning, I wandered into a small bookstore tucked away near the edge of town. One of those independent places where time feels slower. I was looking for a book on sketching anatomy, something to help with my new series for college admissions. I wasn't expecting to see her. She was in the nonfiction aisle, tucked into a corner, holding a paperback with both hands. Her hair was shorter now, softer. No makeup, no accessories, just a loose sweater and jeans. For a moment, she didn't see me, but I saw her, and my entire body froze. Not in fear, not even in anger, just in disbelief, like seeing a ghost you stopped believing in. I must have made a sound because her head turned. Our eyes locked. She didn't move. Neither did I. Eventually, I nodded. Once. Not a greeting, not forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she closed the book, placed it back on the shelf, and walked toward me. Carefully, quietly, as if approaching a wounded animal. When she stopped in front of me, she looked smaller than I remembered. "Hi," she said. I swallowed. There was a long silence. Books surrounded us, muted titles blinking out from the shelves like old memories. The rain tapped gently on the windows. She gestured toward a nearby bench near the window. "Can we sit?" I considered it, then nodded. We sat in silence for a full minute. "I didn't think I'd see you again," I said. She offered a sad smile. "I didn't think I'd let myself be seen." Another silence. She pulled out her phone, thumbed through it for a moment, then stopped. She didn't open the screen. She just stared at the message app as if unsure what to say. "I wrote to you a few times," she finally whispered, "but I never sent them. Letters," she shook her head. "Texts, emails, all unsent." I was scared I'd make it worse. I nodded. "You might how?" She turned the phone toward me, just for a second. The screen showed a draft message. "I miss you. I'm sorry. You don't owe me anything. I hope you're safe. Dated 2 months ago." I didn't read it twice. Just glanced. "That one's better than the others," she said quietly. "Most were selfish." I looked at her, searching her face. She looked tired but calm, like someone who had finally stopped running. "You really don't film anymore?" I asked. "No," she said immediately. "I gave it up. Cold turkey. My therapist helped." "You're in therapy?" She nodded. 3 times a week? It's humbling." There was something in her voice that told me she wasn't lying. "I hated you," I said softly. "Not just because of what you did, but because you made me hate myself for not seeing it sooner." She nodded. "I hated me too?" I took a breath. "You made my worst moments public. You took my voice away." "I know. I don't know if I can ever forgive that." "I don't expect you to." Another silence. Outside, the rain picked up. A few people entered the store, umbrellas folded. The world kept moving, unaware of the weight pressing down on our tiny corner. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small. It was the charm from our old bracelets. Mine had broken long ago. Hers was scratched, worn, the paint nearly gone. "I kept it," she said. "I burned mine," I replied. She smiled sadly. "That's fair?" I didn't ask why she was there. She didn't offer. We just sat. After a few more minutes, she stood up slowly. "I won't bother you. I'm glad I saw you. Even if it doesn't mean anything." "It means something," I said. "It just doesn't mean we're okay." She nodded. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. "I meant it," she said. "You were never just a story to me." And then she was gone. I stayed in the bookstore a long time after that, staring out the rain-streaked window, unsure how to feel. She was still a ghost, but this time she'd said goodbye. And maybe that was enough. 2 months later, I learned there had almost been a documentary. It happened by accident, as these things so often do. I was sitting in the campus cafe with Liam, a classmate from my new media ethics seminar. We weren't close friends, but we'd worked on a few projects together. He was one of those people who always seemed to be around, always listening, always quietly absorbing the world. We were reviewing footage for a mockumentary assignment when he paused a clip, then gave me a strange look. "You know," he said casually, "I used to work with someone who filmed stuff like this. Really emotional, low-lit confessional stuff. Reminded me a bit of this story I edited a year ago." I looked up. "Yeah." He nodded, reaching for his iced coffee. "Back in high school, I helped someone with their editing. She said it was for a long-form project about memory and loss. Never gave me names, just raw footage." My stomach tightened. He kept going, oblivious. It was haunting, like, too real. I didn't ask questions. I was just supposed to cut and color grade. But then one day she called me out of nowhere and said to delete everything. I felt cold. "What was her name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He thought for a moment. "Mara, quiet girl. Smart. Obsessed with narrative structure. Used to talk about emotional continuity, like it was a religion." I set down my drink, my hands suddenly clammy. "She said she was making a documentary." He nodded. "A full-length one, based on years of footage. Like a feature. About this friendship that fell apart. She said it was the most personal thing she'd ever done." "Why didn't she finish it?" He frowned. I asked her that. She just said, because I finally realized I don't have the right. The silence that followed was heavy. I looked away, eyes stinging, heart thudding with something too complex to name. Mara had been planning to make our story public. Again. But somewhere along the way, she stopped herself. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe therapy. Maybe the letter I never sent. Maybe something she'd realized when looking at all that footage she once hoarded like treasure. She had started to tell our story, but chose not to finish it. That mattered. Later that night I walked home slowly, the city lights casting reflections in puddles along the sidewalk. I kept thinking about all the scenes she must have had. Moments I'd forgotten, expressions she'd memorized, things she'd captured that I might never see. And yet, she let it all go. The documentary that never released became something strangely precious, not because of what it could have exposed, but because of what it revealed about her final choice. She gave me something she never had before: control. That night I sat at my desk and opened a blank page in my sketchbook. For the first time since everything, I drew her. Not from anger, not from pain, just as she was the last time I saw her. Quiet, small, honest. I didn't add any words, I didn't photograph it. I just let her lie there unshared, unseen. And for the first time, it felt right. The letters found me when I least expected them, tucked inside a dusty shoebox buried in a mutual friend's attic. Her name was Adrienne, someone Mara and I used to sit next to in art club. We hadn't spoken much since high school ended, but she messaged me one day saying she had something weird I might want to see. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe old photos, maybe a sketchbook, maybe one last cruel joke the universe hadn't gotten around to yet. What I didn't expect were 7 letters, all addressed to me, unsent, folded, dated in Mara's handwriting. They had been sealed, each marked with a number and a short title. Before you knew, after you looked at me differently, the night you lead, when I tried to apologize, when I couldn't. If you're still angry, if you ever forgive me. Adrienne had found them while cleaning out boxes her parents stored after Mara's brief stay at her house during that chaotic year. I didn't read them, she said, handing me the shoebox, but I recognized your name. Figured you should decide what to do with them. I took the box home and sat with it for hours before opening it. The first letter was short, dated a few weeks before I found out about the Glass Friend channel. Mara had written it in pencil, her handwriting messier than usual. You said something today that made my throat close. You said, I trust you more than anyone, and I smiled. And I said I trusted you too. But I didn't say the rest. I didn't say that I'd already betrayed that trust by documenting you like a coward. Not for fame. Not for attention. But because I didn't know how to hold you in memory without turning you into film. I set the letter down. Stared at the wall. I didn't read the rest right away. I couldn't. The second one was longer. Reflective. She wrote about how I had begun to pull away, how she noticed my hesitation and started filming less. Or so she said. But she also admitted that stopping felt like dropping a camera off a cliff, knowing you'd never retrieve the view again. She confessed things I hadn't known, that she'd watched some clips of me dozens of times, that she'd transcribed our conversations like screenplays, that she'd recorded audio of our phone calls and memorized the pauses. Each letter built a deeper image of someone unraveling, not malicious, not calculating, just desperate, lost. In the third letter she wrote, when you lied about the summer program, I knew immediately. But I didn't confront you. I think part of me was relieved. Because it meant you were finally starting to play by the rules I'd set without permission. The words cut deep. She'd known. She'd always known. And yet, she never retaliated. In the fourth and fifth letters, she spoke of shame, not just at what she had done, but at how long it took her to admit she was wrong. I thought apologizing meant giving up the only thing I had left. The only way I knew how to remember you. By the time I reached the sixth letter, I was crying. It read, if you're still angry, I hope you are. You have every right to be. Anger means you're still holding the thread. Silence would mean you've let go completely. And I don't think I could bear knowing I'm no longer part of your story at all. And finally, the last letter. If you ever forgive me, I'm not asking for your friendship back. I don't deserve that. But if one day you think of me and it doesn't hurt, if one day you remember us and the first image isn't a camera lens, then maybe I'll have done one good thing after all. Even if you never say it, even if I never know. I folded the letters back carefully, returned them to the box. I didn't burn them, I didn't share them, I just kept them, tucked in the back of my closet, beneath old sketchbooks and forgotten jackets. A record of everything she never said aloud. Proof that, somewhere behind the lens, she had still been human, and maybe, in some broken way, still my best friend. It happened on the first day of fall, exactly 18 months after Mara disappeared. The trees had just started turning in the park outside my apartment, and the air carried the scent of dry leaves and something colder underneath. I'd just returned from class, arms full of sketchboards and supplies, when my phone buzzed with a strange notification. My heart stopped. It wasn't possible. The channel had been deactivated. Mara had told me she gave it up. The last I knew, she didn't even own a camera anymore. But there it was. A single video, final upload. The thumbnail was blank, just black. No image, no timestamp, no preview. I stared at the screen for several minutes before tapping it. The video opened with silence. Then a slow fade in to light, natural sunlight drifting through a half-open window. A familiar room, long since emptied, her old bedroom, bare walls, an awning bed, a desk with nothing but a piece of paper on it. Mara appeared, walking into frame and sitting down in the chair. She was older now, or maybe just more tired. Her hair had grown longer, her face was thinner. She didn't look into the camera immediately. She stared down at her hands, folded on the desk, breathing slowly. Then she spoke. If you're watching this, I guess it means I couldn't say goodbye in person. This video was scheduled a long time ago, in case I ever needed it. I kept moving the date, pushing it back, hoping I wouldn't need to use it. But I think it's time. There are things I never said and maybe never could. Not in the letters. Not in the silence. So here it is. She looked up directly into the camera. Her eyes were clearer than I remembered, still sad but calm. I betrayed someone I loved more than anything. I turned her into something beautiful, but not real. And I know now that you can't love someone through a lens. You can only love them by letting them see you. Not just the version you want them to remember. She paused. I've deleted everything. Every backup, every copy. I know that doesn't erase the pain. I know it doesn't give her back the privacy I stole. But I hope she knows I'm sorry. Not in the poetic, fragile way I used to be, but in the real, ordinary way people apologize when they've caused harm. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You didn't deserve to become content. You deserve to be my friend. Silence filled the screen again. She reached forward, not dramatically, not with flair, and clicked the camera off. The video ended. No music, no outro, no watermark, just black. I sat there in my room, the echo of her voice lingering like smoke. I didn't cry. I didn't reach out. I just closed the app, set my phone down, and stared out the window at the wind moving through the trees. And in that stillness, I realized something. This was the real ending. No more letters. No more videos. No more unsent messages or whispered confessions. Just the truth, finally spoken. Finally complete. I didn't know if I forgave her, but I knew I could move forward now. Because for the first time, the story had stopped writing itself, and I was free. These were stories that show the limits of friendship. And what happens when love is twisted by fear and control. Mara and I had something real once. Something fragile and beautiful. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a subject. And I stopped knowing where her affection ended and her obsession began. It's easy to villainize someone who hurt you. Harder to see the pain they carried while they did it. I don't think Mara ever wanted to harm me. I think she just didn't know how to be close without capturing every moment. Like if it wasn't recorded, it didn't count. I've learned now that friendship has to be mutual, safe, uncurated, and maybe the most painful lesson is this: some people love you in ways that are not safe. And when you realize that, walking away is not cruelty, it's survival. To anyone listening, if you've ever been watched instead of seen, I see you. You're real. You're enough, even unrecorded. Leave a comment if you've experienced something similar, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about friendship, memory, and the lines we shouldn't cross.